Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the soft, gilded world of a 14th-century queen, where silk drapes shimmer in candlelight and the scent of roses lingers in every corner. You trudge across cold flagstones, your slippers making soft clicks against polished marble, and already someone, probably a chambermaid, is fussing over your hairline while muttering about the proper angle to hold a comb. You probably won't survive this if you think you can skip even one ritual, because in this world, beauty is duty and duty is relentless. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, don't forget to post your location and local time, because, hey, it helps me know which part of the globe is nodding along in sleepy solidarity. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You rise slowly from the carved oak bed, swathed in linen so fine that even the faintest brush against your skin feels like a whisper. The morning air carries a chill, a reminder that the castle's great windows, though beautiful, are mere panes against the world outside. Your hands brush over embroidered cushions, noticing the glint of gold thread catching the candlelight. You inhale, and the faint scent of lavender mixed with beeswax fills your nose. A chambermaid hovers nearby, carrying a basin of water that's been heated over the hearth. This is no casual splash and go. The water is infused with rose petals, crushed violets, or sometimes, depending on rumor, ground pearls. Historians still argue whether these extravagances actually improved complexion or merely performed a ritual of status. But in your mind, the smell alone seems to awaken every pore, promising a kind of magic. The ritual is exacting. You dip a linen cloth into the fragrant water, dabbing it gently across your face. Your skin tingles slightly, a combination of warmth and subtle oils that coat your cheeks. A second chambermaid waits with a brush of soft boar bristles, meant to lift dust and lingering nighttime oils. You follow instructions to the letter: dab, lift, smooth, repeat. There's a hint of rivalry even here because the women of the court have eyes like hawks. The queen's morning look must be perfect before breakfast, or whispers start before the toast is served. You notice a small mirror framed in gilded wood, propped carefully against a windowsill. The reflection is immediate, almost shocking in its clarity, and you see not just your own face but the weight of expectation draped across your shoulders. You stretch your arms, noticing the cool morning draft against your skin, and catch a glimpse of a distant garden through arched windows. The roses there are in bloom, and the scent of their petals seems to mingle with the warmth of your room. A servant offers a scented cloth to pat your hands dry, infused with rose water and a hint of something slightly more exotic, maybe musk or civet. You're careful not to inhale too deeply. Some ingredients are as powerful as they are fragrant. Yet, the combination of tactile sensation and scent pulls you fully into the morning, a kind of alertness mingled with serenity. Historians still argue whether such early perfumery was primarily cosmetic or ritualistic, but in this moment it doesn't matter. You feel awake, present, and acutely aware of your own role in the courtly theater of beauty. Breakfast is light, because a true queen's routine begins with moderation. Thinly sliced fruit, honeyed bread, and a small cup of spiced wine or warm milk. You sip slowly, mindful that the morning meal is as much about ritual as nutrition. The taste of honey on your tongue reminds you of distant hives tended by workers under your name, a gentle reminder that even sweetness has lineage. A chambermaid folds your hair over your shoulders, fingers nimble and deliberate, making subtle adjustments you could never see but immediately feel. You shiver slightly, not from cold, but from the awareness that your appearance is a canvas, and every brushstroke matters. By the time you rise from the low breakfast table, sunlight has begun to pierce the windows, painting stripes of gold across stone floors. You pause for a moment, noticing how the light catches the subtle shimmer of your linens and the soft blush of your cheeks. Somewhere in the castle, a small bell rings for the day's first council, but for now, you remain cocooned in this delicate bubble, where scent, light, and ritual mingle. It's here in these early minutes that the Queen's power begins, not in armies or decrees, but in the precise choreography of self-presentation. You trace a fingertip along the rim of your basin, remembering tales of queens who skipped such rituals and lived to regret it, or, according to gossip, who tried exotic additives that left skin blistered and cheeks splotched. You smile wryly at the absurdity, yet commit the motions to memory. A whisper of silk announces a new arrival, perhaps a lady in waiting or a physician with a tray of herbal tinctures. The air is thick with incense now, a swirl of rosemary, lavender, and, daringly, a hint of ambergris. You inhale cautiously, savoring the warmth of the aroma. Historians still argue whether these fragrant layers were truly therapeutic or simply psychological armor against the long, tedious day ahead. You let your eyes drift over the ornate carvings of the room, over the gilded edges of your mirror, and even toward a small alcove where a jar of honey rests, glinting like a captured sunbeam. You realize that beauty in this world is not only skin deep, it is ritual, pageantry, and a constant negotiation with expectation. By mid-morning, you are washed, scented, and aware of every hair, crease, and glimmer of gold on your garments. The castle stirs, servants moving in rhythmic harmony, bells marking hours, pigeons cooing from the towers. You step toward the arched doorway leading to the outer gardens, and in that moment you feel a strange blend of vulnerability and power. You have performed every ritual, followed every expectation, and yet the real challenge, the public face, the scrutiny, the quiet judgments, awaits just beyond the doors. But for now, you breathe in the faint chill, listen to the birds, and allow yourself a small smile. The day has begun, and so has the long, meticulous dance of a 14th-century queen's beauty. You follow the soft click of your slippers across the polished stone into the private bathing chamber, a space designed to feel more sanctuary than utility. Steam curls lazily from a shallow basin of water warmed over embers, and the faint tang of herbs, thyme, rosemary, a daring touch of lavender, fills your nostrils. You dip your fingers in, feeling the gentle heat ripple across your skin, and for a moment, it's almost like touching the morning sun itself. Here, in the quiet half-light, the morning washing ritual begins, a process as much about display and symbolism as it is about hygiene. Historians still argue whether these elaborate baths truly kept the queen clean or were primarily a staged performance of refinement and control. Your hands glide across your face, tracing every contour with a soft cloth soaked in rose water, and sometimes a fine slurry of crushed pearls. You wrinkle your nose at the faint gritty texture, but the chambermaid assures you this is the mark of luxury. You pause and notice the mirror propped nearby, small, polished bronze that gives back your reflection with a slightly golden hue. You probably won't survive this routine if you try to skip a step. One missed dab of scented water could be scandal enough for gossip to whisper its way across the castle. As you dab around your eyes and along the jawline, a fleeting thought crosses your mind. In another life, you might have just used soap and called it a day. Yet here, every motion has weight, every gesture its own meaning, and every shimmer of skin signals your mastery of courtly expectations. Moving on to the neck and shoulders, the chambermaid pours a thin stream of water infused with crushed violets down your skin, and the scent hits you like a faintly intoxicating perfume. There's a gentle brush of feathers, soft as whispers, to remove dust and encourage circulation, and you shiver in the smallest, most delightful way. Somewhere in your memory, a story lingers about queens who added a pinch of lead powder to their washwater to achieve that ethereal pallor, an idea so dangerous it makes you raise an eyebrow, but rumor or reality, it's hard to say. Historians still argue whether lead-based cosmetics were widely used or exaggerated in later tales, and you can feel the weight of that debate as you smooth a damp cloth across your temples. Next comes the delicate ritual of blotting and powdering. You lift a fine silk cloth to pat your face dry, careful not to disturb the tiny curls of hair that have escaped last night's braiding. Powder is applied sparingly, often a blend of white chalk and crushed pearls, leaving a faint, soft matte finish. Your lips receive just a hint of crushed rose petal for color, enough to suggest vitality without the ostentation of deep pigments that might be considered improper for a morning appearance. The chambermaid whispers advice about posture while you stand, reminding you that face and body must align in harmony. Even subtle misalignment, head too high, shoulders too low, could disrupt the intended effect of regal poise. Your hands wander briefly to your hairline, where oils are applied to tame flyaways, scents blending lightly with the fragrance of the wash water. You notice how the oils catch the candlelight, giving your hair a subtle golden sheen. A tiny quirk of the ritual involves brushing a few drops of rose water over your eyebrows. Yes, eyebrows, because the perfect arch is said to convey not just beauty but moral character. You raise a brow and smirk. It's a lot to expect from such tiny patches of skin. Yet centuries later, these oddities still spark curiosity. Historians debate whether these practices were genuinely widespread or reserved for the most ceremonious of mornings. The queen's hands do not escape scrutiny either. They are bathed, massaged, and lightly perfumed, fingers flexed just so to hint at strength and elegance simultaneously. You flex yours experimentally, imagining the ripple of silk sleeves across the marble floors and the whispers of court ladies noting the subtle grace of each gesture. The entire process takes what feels like hours, but in truth, it's a precise choreography that the court expects completed before the sun reaches its apex. Every scent, touch, and shimmer of water is a claim to status, a silent declaration of beauty as ritualized authority. Before stepping away from the basin, you pause and tilt your head to catch the sunlight streaming through narrow windows. Water droplets glisten like tiny gems along your jawline. You inhale deeply, letting the mingling aromas of herbs, roses, and faint traces of ambergris envelop you. A servant appears with a small jar of pomade, meant for cheeks and temples, and you apply it sparingly, just enough to catch the light but never so much as to seem artificial. In that moment, you feel the delicate balance between vanity and necessity, between personal care and the unspoken performance of power. The morning water ritual has not just cleaned your skin, it has set the stage for the day, for every glance and judgment that will inevitably follow. As you step back, the chambermaid removes the basin and gives you a subtle nod of approval. You feel the morning ritual's quiet authority coursing through you. Each touch, each scent, each careful motion was not mere habit but a declaration of who you are in the court. Outside, the castle stirs, bells toll and pigeons coo, but within this scented, steamy chamber, you exist in a bubble of preparation, poised to face the world with skin that glows softly, eyes that shine alertly, and an awareness that beauty is both armor and message. You exit the room with the smallest, secretive smile, recalling an old story about queens who took baths in milk for luminous skin, and wondering whether those legends exaggerate or capture some kernel of truth. You move toward the dressing chamber, where the scent of heated oils still clings to the air, mingling with the faint aroma of lavender from last night's linen sachets. Your fingers itch to touch your hair, a crown in miniature, each strand a thread in a story of status, vanity, and quiet rebellion. Braiding begins immediately, tight enough to hold through morning audiences, loose enough to allow natural movement. A chambermaid hums softly, comb in hand, teasing out tangles and weaving patterns that can take hours, though to the untrained eye it looks effortless. Historians still argue whether elaborate braiding served purely aesthetic goals or carried symbolic meaning, signaling wealth, marital status, or even political alliances. You probably won't survive this if you think a single comb through your hair is enough. You lift each strand, twist, braid, and pin meticulously. The tools themselves objects of fascination. Ivory combs carved with floral motifs, pins tipped in gold, and tiny ribbons dyed in colors reserved for royalty. Sometimes, rumor has it, queens added drops of wine or crushed saffron to the hair oil, claiming it encouraged shine and strength, though scholars debate whether these concoctions did more harm than good. As you run fingers along a freshly coiled braid, you marvel at the way light catches individual strands, giving the illusion of depth and texture that mirrors the complexity of the cord itself. Dyeing is next, though the options are limited by taste, expense, and superstition. Saffron yields a gentle golden hue, while walnut shells can darken locks to near midnight shades. Occasionally, alchemists promise more exotic tones, verdant greens or deep reds, but you know the risks. Hair can dry brittle, break, or worse, turn unpredictable shades. A tiny laugh escapes you as you remember the whispered story about a queen who accidentally dyed her hair blue, causing a fortnight of awkward bowing and polite whispers at court. You dab a little oil along the scalp, noting the faint herbal aroma, and consider the delicate dance between appearance and danger. The ritual extends beyond mere aesthetics. Hair must be arranged to frame the face perfectly, allowing cheekbones and jawline to catch sunlight or candlelight with maximum effect. You tilt your head slightly, noticing a subtle asymmetry in your reflection, and the chambermaid adjusts a stray ribbon, muttering about symmetry and divine favor. You smirk internally. Symmetry is important, yes, but human faces are beautifully imperfect. Some fringe sources claim that queens would sometimes sew tiny weights into braids to encourage volume or shape, and while it sounds absurd, you can't entirely dismiss the tales. Historians still argue whether these methods were widespread practices or mere courtly myth-making. Combing alone is a sensory experience. You feel each tooth of the fine comb against the scalp, the gentle tug releasing tension from the morning's rituals. The sound is soft, rhythmic, almost meditative, a low hum against the backdrop of distant bells and bustling servants. Occasionally, a chambermaid will sprinkle rose water or lavender water over the hair, a fragrant mist that settles into every coil, reinforcing not only scent but the sense of ritual accomplishment. You catch a whiff and close your eyes briefly, letting the olfactory comfort wash over you. The process is slow, deliberate, and intensely personal, yet fully public in the sense that your appearance is never truly private. Historical texts hint at fringe practices, applying crushed pearls for shine, smearing ground unicorn horn, or a stand-in mineral for luster. But these are often as much legend as fact. You brush a fine layer of pomade along your tresses, feeling the weight and smoothness, knowing that every touch is a balance between tradition, superstition, and practicality. You pause to observe the subtle interplay of shadow and light, braid and ribbon, realizing that hair in this world is never merely decoration. It's a statement, a subtle proclamation of wealth, discipline, and meticulous care. You reach the final stage, arranging curls around the nape and framing the face with precise arcs. Each loop is secured with pins, some tipped in gold, some in silver, others plain to avoid excessive flashiness. A small feather or gem may be tucked here or there, and you smile at the thought of how tiny details carry enormous weight. Movement is also considered. The hair must retain its shape while allowing gestures, lifting a hand, inclining your head, or turning gracefully without disruption. In this way, every strand contributes to the queen's aura, the quiet spectacle of her presence. Once the braiding is complete, you run your fingers lightly over the surface, feeling smoothness, weight, and structure. The soft tug of hidden pins reminds you of the discipline required to maintain beauty and the patience demanded by ritual. A whiff of lavender oil lingers in the air, mixing with the faint scent of combed silk ribbons and warm skin. Outside the dressing chamber, sunlight falls differently now, highlighting angles and contours that were invisible in the dim early morning. You step back, assessing the full effect, hair as armor, as art, as statement. The mirror reflects not just strands but status, identity, and the careful choreography of courtly life. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of future historians debating whether hair care was vanity, obsession, or survival. And yet, despite all these rituals and whispered secrets, there's an undeniable thrill in mastery. Each braid, each ribbon, each subtle curl carries meaning. You run fingers lightly through the final coiled braids, savoring the lingering warmth of oils, the faint scent of herbs, and the private satisfaction of accomplishment. Outside, the court begins to stir, voices rising, footsteps echoing, and the distant bells calling for assembly. You are ready, or at least, as ready as anyone can be in a world where beauty is duty, obsession, and occasional mild peril rolled into one. You step into the wardrobe chamber, a space that smells faintly of lavender, moth-repelling herbs, and the faint tang of silk. The room is lined with racks of velvet, brocade, and the softest silks you've ever touched, all carefully folded or hung, each garment a deliberate choice in the theater of royal beauty. You probably won't survive this if you think the gown is merely clothing. Every layer communicates power, wealth, and subtle signals to courtiers who spend mornings calculating meaning from the width of a sleeve or the glint of a jeweled clasp. Historians still argue whether courtly fashion was more about political maneuvering or simple vanity, but standing here, it's hard to disentangle the two. Your hands skim the fabrics, feeling the richness of velvet embroidered with gold thread, the delicate sheen of silk lined with tiny seed pearls, and the soft warmth of brocaded patterns that depict flowers, birds, and occasionally heraldic motifs. Each gown tells a story, and selecting one is like choosing the right note in a symphony. Too garish, and you offend. Too plain, and you fade into the background. Whispered rumors suggest that some dyes were made from secret blends, sometimes involving crushed insects or minerals, giving colors that seem impossible under natural light. You pause over a deep crimson gown and imagine the subtle way it would catch candlelight, making the wearer appear both regal and subtly dangerous. Beneath the gown, linen undergarments are meticulously folded and stacked. They are less decorative, more functional, but you treat them with care. Softness against skin matters, especially during long hours of courtly observation. You lift a finely stitched chemise and run your fingers along the seams, noting the precision of handwork. The scent of starch and faint herbal infusion clings to the cloth. A chambermaid steps forward with a corset-like garment, its lacing designed to shape the torso perfectly. You can't help but grimace slightly. The lines it will create are aesthetically necessary but not entirely comfortable. Yet discomfort is part of the ritual. True beauty, the court insists, requires small sacrifices. You turn to a rack of outer garments, cloaks, surcoats, and gowns for presentation. Some are embroidered with gold thread depicting scenes of myth or heraldry, others decorated with subtle jeweled motifs that flash only in movement. You lift a sleeve and notice the meticulous stitching, wondering how anyone could sew such tiny patterns by candlelight. Fringe stories say that queens sometimes commissioned garments with hidden pockets for secret notes or charms, though it's unclear whether these were practical or symbolic. Historians still debate whether these hidden details were common or rare luxuries, but they certainly add to the intrigue. Next comes the selection of accessories: belts, jeweled pins, gloves, and a small collection of delicate ribbons. You run fingers over fine chains threaded with gemstones, feeling the cool weight and imagining how they will move as you raise your hand to greet a visiting dignitary. Gloves are particularly tricky. They must be long enough to cover the arms but soft enough to allow subtle gestures, whether holding a fan, a goblet, or a delicate piece of embroidery. You tuck a pair of embroidered gloves into your gown sleeve, noting the faint scent of lavender sachets hidden inside. You remember hearing about queens who infused gloves with rare perfumes, giving off delicate whiffs whenever the hand moved, a subtle olfactory statement of refinement and presence. Shoes, surprisingly, are no less complicated. Pointed or rounded, elevated or flat, each style carries signals of rank and propriety. You slip into soft leather, feeling the gentle give and the quiet thud against the polished floors. A chambermaid ties ribbons around your ankles, and you note the subtle way they accentuate the length of your legs and the curve of your stride. You probably won't survive this wardrobe session if you ignore details. Even the wrong knot or slightly loose ribbon can send whispers through court corridors. Finally, you choose jewelry. A delicate necklace rests against your collarbone, gems catching the candlelight, while earrings frame your face. The selection is deliberate, nothing too flashy, yet nothing too humble. Gold and silver, pearls and sapphires, each piece carries subtle meaning. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens would dab tiny amounts of scented oil on their jewelry to leave faint traces of fragrance in passing, though scholars still argue whether this was practical or performative. You clasp a bracelet and flex your wrist, imagining the tiny flashes of light it will make as you move your hands in courtly gestures. The mirror reflects your final ensemble, gown flowing perfectly, accessories in place, hair braided and pinned, subtle scents trailing in your wake. You take a deep breath, noting how textures, colors, and shimmering details harmonize. Every inch of this preparation is both armor and expression, a carefully curated performance that announces presence, power, and aesthetic mastery. You smile quietly at the thought that centuries later, we are still fascinated by these rituals, debating their purpose, authenticity, and the lengths queens went to embody beauty and influence. As you glide from wardrobe to the day ahead, you carry with you the awareness that beauty is a constant negotiation. Between comfort and display, personal preference and courtly expectation, practicality and theater. Every fold of silk, every glint of gold, every carefully chosen scent is part of a larger narrative, one that you are now fully enmeshed in, poised, polished, and ready to step into the public eye. You step into the small, fragrant chamber devoted entirely to scents, oils, and alchemical curiosities, and it's almost like entering a miniature forest of aromas. Shelves are lined with glass vials, ceramic jars, and little metal containers, each holding a different potion, infusion, or perfume, some familiar, some decidedly unusual. You probably won't survive this part if you underestimate the power of scent. Every whiff is a subtle statement, signaling refinement, mood, or even political allegiance. Historians still argue whether some of these concoctions were actually beneficial for skin and hair, or simply a theatrical indulgence for the senses. Your fingers hover over small vials of rosewater, orange blossom, and ambergris-infused oils. You dip a fingertip into one, swirling it between your palms, inhaling deeply. The warmth of the oil spreads, mingling with the faint, lingering fragrance of lavender from your wardrobe. A chambermaid suggests a dab behind each ear, a tiny ritual that supposedly invites compliments, though you chuckle at the idea that mere aroma could sway the court entirely. Fringe accounts claim queens occasionally used oils made from exotic ingredients, musk, civet, or even crushed pearls, to leave an invisible trail of allure. Whether myth or reality, you can't deny the subtle psychological thrill. You begin layering oils, starting with the pulse points, wrists, temples, and the hollow of the throat. Each spot is chosen deliberately, where skin is thinner, warmth more pronounced, and scent diffuses naturally. A faint mist of rose water is sprayed over your hair, mingling with the oils and causing the intricate braids to gleam faintly. You probably won't survive this ritual without patience. One misstep in the blend can overpower, leaving you more pungent than enchanting. Still, the olfactory landscape is intoxicating, each note blending harmoniously like a symphony of subtle seduction. Pomades and creams are next, meant for the cheeks and forehead. A tiny dab is applied in circular motions, massaging oils and essences into the skin. The sensation is almost meditative, a tactile reminder that beauty is labor, devotion, and careful calculation. You notice the faint warmth of the cream against your skin and smile, recalling tales of queens who allegedly added ground gold or crushed pearls to their facial ointments. Historians still debate whether these luxuries were common or simply exaggerated by later chroniclers aiming to highlight extravagance. You, however, appreciate the ritual for what it is, a daily ceremony that transforms preparation into mindfulness. The Queen's entourage often recommends experimental mixtures, petals, rare resins, or herbal distillates that claim to stimulate radiance or preserve youth. You inhale one particularly heady blend of jasmine and musk, savoring the faintly dizzying effect. A servant whispers that a drop of rose water on the fingertips and a quick touch to the temples can invite favorable glances. Though whether this is superstition, performance, or psychological effect, scholars continue to debate. You giggle softly, imagining the tiny scent trails weaving around the hallways like invisible courtiers. Even the tiniest details carry meaning. A faint dab on the hands, a whisper of oil along the collarbone, or a quick spritz across the chest all create a holistic sensory impression. Some fringe practices involve placing scented pearls or pomanders in the folds of a gown, allowing a delicate aroma to escape with every movement. You smile at the ingenuity, knowing that even subtle elements contribute to the overall narrative of beauty and influence. Historians still argue whether these elaborate strategies were widespread or reserved for extraordinary occasions, but the preparation feels undeniably luxurious. You pause to savor the act itself, inhaling, massaging, layering, and watching how oils catch the morning light, enhancing the delicate shimmer of silk and skin alike. The fragrances mix with the faint scent of beeswax and rosewater from earlier routines, forming a delicate cloud that announces presence without words. You probably won't survive this without noticing how scent influences perception. A well-chosen perfume can make an entrance, emphasize authority, or even subtly distract from imperfections. Finally, you allow a faint mist of exotic scent to drift over your hair and shoulders, completing the olfactory ensemble. Each layer of aroma acts as a gentle halo, invisible yet powerfully present, reinforcing the Queen's aura of elegance and control. You catch your reflection in a small bronze mirror, seeing hair glistening, skin glowing, and a faint perfume haze clinging to the curves of your silhouette. In this moment, beauty is an immersive ritual, a combination of touch, smell, and sight, designed to enchant, assert, and mesmerize. As you leave the scented chamber, the air feels alive, subtly shifting with every breath you take. You carry with you not only fragrance but confidence, a sensory signature that announces your presence before a word is spoken. Perfume and pomade, oils and essences, they are more than embellishment. They are language, signaling mastery, refinement, and a quietly persuasive charm. You smile at the tiny absurdity of it all and yet feel entirely enthralled by the delicate, intoxicating art of being a 14th-century queen. You move to the small dressing table, where mirrors catch the soft morning light, reflecting not only your face but the layered rituals that have led to this moment. Your lips, cheeks, and teeth await attention, each requiring precision. You probably won't survive this phase if you think pale skin alone suffices. The subtle blush of health, the gleam of clean teeth, and the careful tinting of lips are all part of the language of courtly beauty. Historians still argue whether some whitening practices were healthful or outright dangerous, but for now, you're committed to the aesthetic outcome. Starting with the complexion, you dab lightly with a powder made from white chalk, sometimes mixed with egg whites, achieving that porcelain look so prized in the court. The cool touch feels like the whisper of a secret, and you imagine centuries later, scholars wondering if this pale glow was a true reflection of status or just the product of unhealthy obsession. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens layered powdered lead for extreme pallor, a thought that makes you shiver lightly. Yet even the tiniest hint was enough to convey wealth and refinement. You smooth the powder across your jaw and forehead, ensuring even coverage while maintaining a subtle natural warmth. Next, your lips receive careful attention. Crushed rose petals, ground to a fine paste, provide a soft tint that conveys vitality without appearing excessive. You press gently, aware that the color must complement your pale skin rather than compete with it. You probably won't survive this if you forget to keep the motion subtle. Anything too bold would be scandalous for morning appearances. A faint dab of scented oil seals the tint, leaving a whisper of fragrance that lingers just long enough to suggest health and elegance. Historians still debate whether these lip stains were widely applied or reserved for high ceremonial occasions, and you find the ambiguity strangely comforting. Your teeth, surprisingly, are not neglected. Though toothbrushes as we know them are absent, cloths rubbed with herbal pastes, powdered mint, or crushed bark help keep them bright. You work carefully, mindful of the faint grit against your enamel, and imagine that this attention is part hygiene, part display. Fringe sources claim that some queens rinsed with wine or vinegar to whiten teeth, though you pause, skeptical of the practicality and the taste. Still, the effort reflects a clear understanding. A queen's smile must be inviting but not careless, luminous without seeming forced. Cheeks receive a delicate dusting of color, sometimes crushed saffron, sometimes powdered berries, lightly applied to simulate a gentle flush. The effect is subtle, whispering health rather than shouting vanity. You notice how the powder interacts with earlier oils and creams, creating a soft, layered glow that seems to animate the skin. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the balance required. Too much color would appear artificial, too little would look tired or sickly. Historians still argue whether these blushes were cosmetic innovation or symbolic signals of fertility and vitality, and you let that question float in your mind as you work. Eyebrows, those subtle sentinels of expression, are combed and darkened ever so slightly with powdered herbs. The effect is minimal but deliberate, creating arches that frame your eyes, enhance expression, and convey alertness. Some fringe tales claim queens would subtly tint eyebrows to mimic the effect of divine favor or celestial beauty, though the veracity is uncertain. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the tiny details. In court, even a misaligned arch could invite commentary, gentle teasing, or mild scorn. You tilt your head, checking the interplay of pale skin, softly tinted lips, and gleaming teeth in the mirror. The balance of health, subtlety, and refinement is a delicate negotiation. You inhale faint rose water and lavender from the room, enjoying the way scent, texture, and color harmonize. Even in this intimate space, beauty is performative, signaling not only health and vitality but intelligence, discipline, and awareness of courtly codes. Historians still debate the extent to which these cosmetic practices were about self-expression versus societal expectation, but standing here, it feels like a blend of both. Finally, you run your fingertips lightly across your cheeks and lips, assessing the morning's work. A faint glow, a whisper of color, and the subtle shine of oils complete the look. You probably won't survive this if you rush. The small details matter as much as the grand gestures of ceremony. You notice the mirror reflecting not just your image but the layered labor, ritual, and intent woven into each gesture. Pale complexion, tinted lips, gleaming teeth. They are more than aesthetic. They are language, subtle yet powerful, and entirely in your hands. With the mirror's reflection settled in your mind, you stand back and breathe, aware that each step has contributed to a carefully curated appearance that balances allure, status, and courtly expectation. Outside, the castle hums with the rising day. But in this small chamber, your face, lips, and teeth are prepared, each detail whispering authority, elegance, and an unmistakable quiet command. You smile faintly, aware that even this intimate attention carries weight, and that the work of beauty is as much about ritual and presence as it is about paint and powder. You step into the queen's private apothecary corner, where jars, vials, and small wooden boxes seem to hum with mystery. The air smells faintly of herbs, resin, and occasionally something far stranger, crocodile dung, if rumors are to be believed. You probably won't survive this if you think beauty here is straightforward. Some concoctions are as bizarre as they are fragrant. Historians still argue whether queens really used such exotic or potentially hazardous ingredients, or if these tales are exaggerated gossip meant to entertain chroniclers. Your fingers hover over small jars filled with ground alabaster, powdered gold, and even crushed pearls. The idea is to blend them into creams, pastes, or washes to achieve a luminous complexion that seems almost otherworldly. You lift a pinch of powdered gold and let it slip through your fingers, watching sunlight catch on each fleck like tiny stars. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens even incorporated rare minerals in tiny amounts to simulate youthfulness or divine favor, though the effectiveness, or safety, remains dubious. You probably won't survive this if you forget that even a trace of misapplied mineral could irritate skin, but the thrill of ritual and spectacle outweighs caution for a moment. The crocodile dung, yes, that infamous ingredient, is stored in a small ceramic container, carefully labeled and sealed. A faint whiff reminds you that beauty in the 14th century was not for the faint of heart. Supposedly, this ingredient was believed to tighten pores and improve complexion, though the practical benefits are debated and likely minimal. Historians still argue whether such extreme measures were actually widespread or more legend than lived reality, but the stories linger in courtly gossip, whispered over breakfast or during tedious council meetings. You wrinkle your nose and quickly move on, amused by the audacity of those who dared to experiment. You reach for alabaster powder next, blending it with rosewater into a creamy paste. The cool texture slides across your fingers as you dab it gently on your cheeks and forehead. It feels luxurious, almost soothing, and creates a subtle matte glow. You probably won't survive this if you overdo it. The line between radiance and ghostly pallor is thin. A chambermaid reminds you of subtlety, smoothing edges with careful fingers. Fringe sources suggest some queens also added tiny amounts of crushed pearls to their ointments, producing a faint shimmer visible only in candlelight. It's delicate, almost magical, the way these minute touches alter perception. Powdered herbs line another shelf: rosemary, thyme, violet, and sometimes more exotic spices. You grind them slightly, imagining the scent layering with rosewater and almond oil. Each addition is both cosmetic and symbolic. Some scents were thought to convey virtue, attract favor, or protect against ill humors. You dab a small amount along your temples, inhaling the faint mix of floral and earthy notes. Historians still argue whether scent in cosmetics was primarily functional or performed social signaling, and you feel the ambiguity hover as you work. A small vial of liquid gold-infused oil sits waiting. You pour a tiny drop between your palms, warming it before smoothing it along the curves of your face, neck, and shoulders. The shimmer catches the light, adding depth and softness to the skin. You probably won't survive this if you rush. precision is everything. Fringe stories claim queens sometimes used gold-infused cosmetics to impress visiting dignitaries or to appear almost supernatural in candlelight. You smile at the thought, imagining subtle glitter reflecting off polished stone walls, catching eyes without seeming intentional. Even your hands and arms are not neglected. Oils, creams, and powders glide across wrists and fingers, each gesture reinforcing the illusion of effortless perfection. A delicate scent trail lingers, invisible yet perceptible, signaling refinement without words. The interplay of shimmer, scent, and texture becomes a quiet language of power, whispered in movement rather than spoken aloud. You probably won't survive this ritual if you underestimate its psychological weight. A well-prepared queen projects authority before speaking a word. As you step back and survey the effects, the combination of crocodile dung lore, powdered minerals, and aromatic oils produces a complex aura of ritualized beauty. Your skin glows faintly, your hands shimmer subtly, and a gentle perfume clings to you like an invisible veil. Historians still debate whether these extremes were typical, occasional, or exaggerated. But in this moment, the theater of cosmetic mastery is undeniably real. You inhale deeply, absorbing scent, sight, and texture alike, and feel fully present in the layered, sensorial world of a 14th-century queen. Every bizarre ingredient, every shimmer, every scented trail reinforces a central truth. Beauty is an immersive performance. It is tactile, aromatic, and visual, a delicate choreography that demands patience, skill, and courage. You probably won't survive this if you don't appreciate the artistry involved, the meticulous layering, and the subtle messages carried in every touch, every dab, every fleeting sparkle. You smile faintly at the audacity of it all, stepping from the apothecary corner, feeling like both participant and observer in a living, breathing ritual of power and allure. You step onto the smooth stone floor of the Queen's private hall, a space designed not for combat but for movement, grace, and the subtle demonstration of authority. The air smells faintly of waxed wood, mixed with lingering rosewater and faint traces of herbal oils from the morning rituals. You probably won't survive this if you think beauty stops at face and hair. Posture, poise, and fluid movement are just as essential. Historians still argue whether these exercises were practical, intended to improve health, or primarily performative for courtly appearances. But standing here, it feels like a blend of all three. Your bare feet make quiet clicks against the stone as you begin to stretch. The Queen's attendants guide you through a series of gentle bending motions, light squats and subtle turns, all designed to lengthen the spine, open the chest, and create an air of effortless elegance. Fringe accounts claim some of these exercises resemble early gymnastics or dance, though their exact form is lost to history. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the importance of small movements. A tilt of the head, the angle of a shoulder, or the sway of a gown can speak volumes in court. A chambermaid places a small stick along your back, reminding you to maintain alignment. You inhale, feeling the stretch across your shoulders and spine, and imagine how every step in the hall will ripple through your posture, sending subtle signals of authority and refinement. Even breathing is deliberate, shallow enough to maintain elegance but deep enough to sustain stamina through the morning ceremonies. Historians still debate whether these routines had measurable health benefits or were largely aesthetic, designed to create the perfect visual impression for courtiers and visitors. You begin walking slowly, paying attention to the exact placement of each foot. The Queen's shoes, soft leather with slight elevation, encourage a careful, deliberate stride. You probably won't survive this if you ignore balance. A stumble or uneven step could betray a lapse in composure, drawing unwanted attention or whispered commentary. Fringe stories suggest some queens even practiced walking in miniature gardens or along narrow corridors to refine their gait, turning mundane movement into an art form. The rhythm of your steps, combined with the flow of silk, creates a subtle dance that communicates confidence and authority without a single word. Next comes a series of gentle arm movements. You lift, lower, and rotate, feeling the weight of silk sleeves and the faint pull of embroidery against your skin. The gestures are precise yet natural, designed to highlight elegance and reinforce presence. You smile at the thought that centuries later, scholars still debate whether such movements were conscious performance or ingrained habit. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the interplay of limbs and fabric. The subtle flick of a wrist or the slight bend of an elbow contributes to the overall impression of grace. Balancing exercises follow. You lift one foot slightly, pivoting on the other, maintaining composure while adjusting your gown to prevent dragging. Each micro-adjustment is deliberate, controlled, and aesthetic. Fringe sources claim queens sometimes wore hidden weights in their sleeves or skirts to improve posture or train movement, though the evidence is anecdotal at best. You probably won't survive this if you don't appreciate the physicality behind seemingly effortless elegance. Every gesture is a negotiation between control, appearance, and endurance. Finally, you practice turns and curtsies, small yet significant displays of deference and poise. The movement is a blend of art and ritual. The spine erect, the arms positioned to catch light, the gaze soft but deliberate. A chambermaid observes, adjusting angles subtly, ensuring that every turn flows seamlessly into the next. Historians still argue whether such exercises were part of formal education or daily habit, but you feel the transformative effect. Movement has become an extension of appearance, a mobile complement to the rituals of skin, hair, and scent. By the time you finish, your body feels awakened, elongated, and in perfect harmony with your attire. Each step, tilt, and gesture is no longer conscious. It is instinct, choreographed by repeated attention and guided by centuries of courtly expectation. You probably won't survive this if you forget the central lesson. Beauty in the 14th century is as much about the way you move through space as the way your skin or hair catches light. You pause, inhaling the faint mixture of rosewater, oils, and warm stone, feeling a subtle, almost imperceptible authority radiate from posture alone. Movement, you realize, is not simply functional. It is a silent language. Every turn, every sway, every poised step communicates refinement, intelligence, and awareness. You leave the hall carrying the quiet power of posture and grace, a form of beauty as potent as perfume, powder, or pearls, a physical vocabulary that marks presence and commands attention without uttering a single word. The castle corridors await, and with every stride you are already performing, asserting, and enchanting. You glide toward the dining chamber, where long oak tables gleam under the light of morning candles and windows. The aroma of baked bread, roasted meats, and fresh herbs mingles with the lingering scents of rosewater and oils, creating an intoxicating symphony that speaks to both nourishment and ceremony. You probably won't survive this part if you think food is merely fuel. For a queen, every bite shapes not only the body but the outward appearance. Historians still argue whether medieval diets genuinely impacted skin, hair, and energy, or whether the elaborate menus were more about display and status. The first course is light: thin slices of spiced fruit, honeyed bread, and small pastries delicately arranged on silver platters. You notice the subtle variations in color and texture, the soft sheen of honey catching the candlelight. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens believed in eating particular foods at specific times to enhance beauty: carrots for hair, almonds for skin, or even rare herbs for a luminous complexion, though the scientific basis is debated. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the quiet ritual of mindful consumption. Even the way you hold a fork, cut fruit, or lift a goblet signals refinement. You sip a warm beverage, a spiced milk or diluted wine, allowing it to glide slowly over your tongue. The warmth spreads through your chest, relaxing muscles tensed from morning rituals while subtly hydrating your skin. A chambermaid nudges a small tray toward you with medicinal tonics, tiny mixtures of herbs and extracts designed to balance humors, strengthen digestion, or, according to rumor, enhance beauty. You pause, inhaling the fragrant steam. Historians still debate the efficacy of such tonics versus their role in courtly performance, yet the psychological boost seems undeniable. Your fingers hover over small bowls of nuts, seeds, and dried fruits. Each morsel is chosen for its supposed restorative properties, but also for its elegance. Easy to handle, visually appealing, and symbolic of careful cultivation. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the subtle interplay between diet and image. Even the smallest crumb can reflect either attentiveness to health or reckless indulgence. Fringe sources hint that some queens kept secret diaries of daily consumption to track the effect of certain foods on skin, hair, or weight, a proto-beauty journal that straddled science, superstition, and obsession. Between bites, you lift your gaze to the windows, noticing the soft morning light illuminating the edges of the polished silverware. Every detail is calculated: table arrangement, seating order, portion size, all elements of the sensory experience meant to reinforce the queen's composure and control. You take a small piece of fruit, feeling the smooth skin against your fingers, and imagine the way its subtle sweetness might mirror the glow in your cheeks after the morning's rituals. Historians still argue whether diet truly influenced appearance or was simply ritualized to complement cosmetic practices. But either way, you sense the interconnectedness of preparation, sustenance, and presentation. Hydration is carefully measured. You sip water infused with rose petals or herbs, noting the gentle fragrance and the cooling sensation on your throat. Some fringe accounts suggest that tiny amounts of wine were added to water to stimulate circulation, though the risks were acknowledged and debated. You probably won't survive this if you disregard the subtle ways hydration impacts skin glow, energy, and posture, factors that the court notices without ever mentioning aloud. As the meal progresses, conversation begins. Courtiers comment politely on harvest yields, neighboring alliances, or the latest news from distant cities. You respond with measured grace, gestures as elegant as any movement practiced earlier, voice calm and melodic. Even eating and speaking simultaneously is a balancing act, demonstrating control over appetite, expression, and decorum. Fringe stories claim that queens sometimes employed small gestures, like brushing fingertips lightly along the rim of a goblet, to convey both refinement and authority, a nuance only the observant would notice. By the end of the light morning repast, you feel nourished, hydrated, and subtly enhanced by both food and ritual. The interplay of diet, posture, and calm observation has prepared you for the next phase of the day. You probably won't survive this if you think beauty is purely external. It is, as ever, holistic, extending from skin to spirit, from gesture to taste, and from physical presence to subtle social signaling. The court awaits, but for a brief, perfect moment, you savor the quiet confidence born of mindful nourishment. As you rise from the table, fingertips brushing the polished surface, you recognize the delicate alchemy at work. Diet, tonics, and ceremonial attention combine to support outward appearance and inward calm. Beauty here is both armor and invitation, structured by ritual, guided by knowledge, and flavored by a touch of superstition. You carry this awareness with each measured step toward the day's unfolding courtly duties, feeling strengthened, poised, and wholly integrated into the performance of regal presence. Section 10. You enter the queen's small chamber of adornment, where jewelry, ribbons, and delicate chains await their turn in the morning ritual. The air smells faintly metallic, mingled with rosewater and lingering oils from earlier routines. You probably won't survive this if you think these tiny accessories are frivolous. Each piece conveys status, subtly signals wealth, and can shift perceptions of authority in an instant. Historians still argue whether jewelry served as true power leverage or merely as decorative indulgence, but standing here, it feels inseparable from the performance of beauty. You lift a delicate gold necklace set with tiny sapphires and pearls, feeling its weight settle into your fingers. Placement matters. The chain must fall exactly where light catches just enough to accentuate the curve of the neck without drawing undue attention. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens added scented oils to necklaces so they exuded faint perfume when worn, a silent statement of allure and refinement. You probably won't survive this if you neglect the small gestures. One misaligned clasp can ruin the illusion of effortless elegance. Earrings come next, tiny jewels threaded into the earlobes. You test their swing as you tilt your head, ensuring that movement remains subtle yet eye-catching. Even this small motion carries meaning, alertness, grace, and measured engagement with the court. Some fringe stories claim that queens sometimes wore multiple piercings hidden beneath veils, revealing them only to favored guests, a secret language of power and intimacy. Historians still debate the prevalence and significance of such practices, leaving a playful ambiguity in the history books. Rings and bracelets follow, their arrangement deliberate. You stack thin gold rings along your fingers, alternating with tiny gemstones that catch the morning light. Bracelets rest lightly on wrists, jingling ever so faintly with motion. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the weight of symbolism. Certain stones represented lineage, virtue, or alliances, subtly broadcasting messages only the educated court would decode. Fringe accounts suggest hidden compartments in rings, concealing notes or charms, a practical, secretive, and slightly mischievous touch. Hairpins, ribbons, and tiny diadems are chosen with care. You tuck a ribbon along a braid, noting how it enhances the shimmer of hair and complements gown color. A small jeweled pin anchors the arrangement, creating a glint visible only in passing light. Fringe tales claim some queens sewed miniature charms or lucky symbols into hair accessories, a private talisman beneath layers of public display. Historians still argue whether such charms were commonplace or occasional eccentricities, leaving a sense of mystery over even the most minute details. Gloves, surprisingly, are not an afterthought. Soft, supple leather or silk is pulled on with precise care, fingers aligned and wrists cinched to perfection. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate their importance. The correct glove communicates refinement, discipline, and readiness. Fringe stories suggest that scented gloves or slight embroidery could whisper status or family allegiance without a single word, turning even mundane gestures into subtle performances of power. Finally, you assess the overall harmony of adornments. Necklace, earrings, rings, bracelets, ribbons, pins, and gloves must all converse in quiet synchrony, reinforcing elegance without screaming ostentation. You tilt your head, testing the interplay of light on metals and gems, inhaling the faint fragrance lingering from scented ribbons and oils. Historians still debate whether such meticulous attention to accessories was about genuine beauty, social signaling, or a blend of both, but you feel the effect profoundly. A sense of controlled, deliberate presence that radiates confidence and authority. With a small, private nod to yourself, you step back from the mirror, appreciating the delicate choreography that brings together hair, gown, jewelry, and scent. You probably won't survive this if you ignore how subtle interplay, light motion, scent, creates an almost hypnotic presence, capable of influencing perception before a word is spoken. Every detail contributes to a seamless performance. A queen's beauty is never incidental, always intentional, and always in dialogue with the eyes, ears, and imagination of her audience. As you leave the chamber of adornment, you carry with you the invisible halo of jewelry, scent, and poise, a quiet assertion of presence that demands attention, respect, and subtle admiration. Beauty has become a language, and you are fluent in every nuance, gesture, and shimmer. The court awaits, but with each step, you move with the full weight of carefully curated ritual, subtly commanding and enchanting at once. You step into the Queen's private study, a space scented faintly with parchment, ink, and a hint of lavender. Here, beauty and intellect converge, and you probably won't survive this if you think appearance alone suffices. Poise, knowledge, and careful conversation shape perception as much as powder and pearls. Historians still argue whether 14th-century queens genuinely engaged in scholarship or primarily performed the appearance of learning, but seated here, you feel the weight of both possibility and expectation. A low desk is stacked with manuscripts, delicate quills, and small jars of ink. You reach for a sheet of vellum, running a fingertip along its smooth surface. The texture reminds you of the tactile rituals that have defined the morning, from powders to silks, now mirrored in the careful handling of words. Fringe accounts hint that some queens infused ink with aromatic oils or crushed flowers, subtly blending scent with written expression, a curious blend of practical and performative acts. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the importance of gesture. Even how you handle a quill conveys grace, discipline, and refinement. You begin reading aloud, softly at first, letting the words roll over the tongue and settle into posture and cadence. The act is deliberate, almost musical. A queen's voice is a weapon, an ornament, and a signal of intellect all at once. You notice how small gestures, the tilt of the head, the rise and fall of shoulders, complement inflection, creating a subtle aura of command. Historians still debate whether daily reading was intended to educate, impress courtiers, or reinforce internal discipline. But for now, it feels both nourishing and performative. Next comes writing, delicate yet precise. You dip the quill into ink, feeling the cool flow across the nib, and trace letters slowly, deliberately. Each stroke communicates education, refinement, and patience, projecting authority in an age when literacy itself was a mark of elite status. Fringe stories suggest some queens embedded tiny sketches or coded symbols in margins, personal flourishes invisible to the casual observer yet rich in meaning for confidants. You probably won't survive this if you rush. Careful execution is critical, blending intellect, gesture, and subtle beauty. You pause to consider correspondence, letters intended for allies, relatives, or distant dignitaries. Each envelope is sealed with wax, the emblem pressed carefully to signify authenticity and prestige. The choice of ink, paper, and even handwriting style conveys subtle nuances, like the exact curl of a signature or the spacing of words. Historians still argue whether these details were universally understood codes or performative signals primarily for local observers, but you sense the powerful role of ritualized literacy. Even gestures while reading or writing carry significance. Fingers lightly trace lines, wrists remain delicate but controlled, and elbows hold precise angles to maintain posture and elegance. Fringe accounts claim some queens learned to coordinate hand, eye, and facial expression to convey confidence and intelligence simultaneously, a subtle art that blends movement with appearance. You probably won't survive this if you ignore how cognition, poise, and subtle motion intersect to communicate presence. Finally, you step back from the desk, closing manuscripts with care, inhaling the scent of vellum and ink. The study has been a quiet arena of ritualized beauty, mental as well as physical. Words, gestures, and posture coalesce into a performance as intricate as powdered cheeks, braided hair, or scented oils. You probably won't survive this if you overlook the unity of mind and body. Intellect, gesture, and presence are threads woven into the fabric of beauty. As you leave the study, you carry the subtle power of quiet competence, awareness, and deliberate engagement. The day will unfold in ceremonies and audiences, but you know that inner cultivation is as essential to the queenly presence as silk, gold, and fragrance. Every step, glance, and utterance will now carry the weight of both wisdom and carefully curated elegance. You enter the chamber reserved for the queen's midday repose, a small room softly lit by high windows, the air scented faintly with lavender and beeswax. The walls are hung with tapestries depicting hunting scenes, floral motifs, and occasional allegorical stories. You probably won't survive this if you think rest is mere idleness. Here, repose is both restorative and a ritual of beauty, teaching the body calm poise while conserving energy for public duties. Historians still argue whether these midday rituals were practical for health or carefully performative, but the soft warmth of sunlight makes it easy to imagine both benefits. A small couch, draped in velvet and cushions stuffed with herbs, awaits. You lie down, feeling the gentle resistance of feathers beneath your body, and close your eyes. Fringe accounts suggest some queens added drops of scented oil to linens or pillows, infusing rest with aroma meant to soothe mind and body while leaving a subtle trail for attendants. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the subtle power of scent. Even in repose, perception matters. Your breathing slows naturally, drawing attention to the gentle rise and fall of your chest. This quiet rhythm subtly shapes posture and poise, reinforcing elegance without conscious effort. You flex fingers and toes, releasing tension from earlier rituals of movement, hair, and makeup. Historians still debate whether such micro-exercises were intentionally integrated into rest periods or were incidental, yet the effect on graceful presence is undeniable. Sunlight falls across your face, highlighting the delicate shimmer of oils applied earlier. You notice how the layers of powder, creams, and tinted blush interact with natural light, creating a soft glow. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the importance of observing yourself even in private moments. Understanding how light interacts with appearance is as much a skill as applying cosmetics. Fringe stories claim queens would occasionally place small mirrors strategically on their pillows to study these effects, a tiny, almost secretive method of refining ritual. Hands and wrists rest lightly on the cushions, fingers occasionally tracing the embroidery of silk covers. Each movement is deliberate, even in rest, ensuring that gestures remain soft and elegant. You inhale faint herbal scents, allowing the warmth of sun and fabric to ease minor muscle tension. Historians still argue whether these quiet exercises were primarily health-oriented or aesthetic, yet the meditative rhythm seems to cultivate both calm and subtle authority. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the subtle power of micro-adjustments, tilting the head slightly, softening the shoulders, or maintaining a gently arched back, enhances both comfort and the outward expression of refinement. Fringe accounts suggest that queens sometimes practiced controlled eyelid movement or subtle facial expressions even while resting, preparing the face for smooth performance once awake. You smile at the thought, appreciating the blend of discipline, ritual, and gentle indulgence. Finally, your senses settle. Sunlight, scent, soft fabrics, and quiet awareness combine to produce a restorative pause. You emerge feeling subtly rejuvenated, muscles relaxed yet poised, mind alert yet calm. You probably won't survive this if you forget the purpose. Beauty is not just display but maintenance, a holistic attention to body, posture, and aura that extends even into moments of private rest. As you leave the chamber, the world feels quieter, your presence softened but still palpable. Each step is lighter, each gesture smoother, as if the brief period of repose has harmonized mind and body. Ritual, scent, posture and calm have become inseparable elements of beauty, preparing you to step back into the court with both elegance and quietly radiating authority. You step into the Queen's private garden, a sun-dappled sanctuary where carefully tended flowers, fragrant herbs, and climbing vines form a mosaic of color and scent. You probably won't survive this if you think beauty is limited to the chamber. Nature itself becomes part of the ritual, inspiring adornment, fragrance, and posture. Historians still argue whether queens personally engaged with gardens or simply used them as scenic backdrops, but the gentle warmth of morning sunlight and the soft rustle of leaves suggest a quiet intimacy with this space. You run your fingers along delicate rose petals, inhaling the subtle perfume that mingles with lavender, rosemary, and faint traces of jasmine. Fringe stories suggest that queens sometimes collected petals to crush into oils, creams, or powdered cosmetics, a miniature, fragrant alchemy connecting nature directly to beauty rituals. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the subtle impact of scent on mood and presence. Even a brief inhalation can shift confidence, relaxation, and poise. Walking along a stone path, you observe bees, butterflies, and tiny birds flitting from flower to flower. The rhythms of nature mirror the deliberate cadence of your earlier movements, slow, measured, yet effortlessly elegant. A chambermaid carries a small basket of freshly gathered herbs and blossoms, which you might later incorporate into creams, hair treatments, or scented powders. Historians still debate whether queens personally handled such materials or delegated entirely to attendants, but engaging senses in the garden feels integral to the continuity of ritual. You pause by a small fountain, the gentle splash of water creating a quiet symphony. The motion of the liquid inspires reflection on the careful choreography of beauty routines, fluid gestures, soft sways, subtle glints of light against jewelry, skin, and silk. Fringe accounts hint that some queens believed exposure to moving water, combined with specific herbs, enhanced skin luminosity or hair sheen. You probably won't survive this if you dismiss the psychological effect of environmental stimuli. Nature itself subtly educates poise and awareness. Kneeling to touch a patch of thyme or crushed petals, you release their aroma into the air. The scent mingles with lingering rosewater and the subtle shimmer of oils already applied. Even in this semi-private ritual, the garden contributes to the layered sensory experience, reinforcing calm, elegance, and attentive presence. Historians still argue whether such botanical involvement was a matter of superstition, aesthetic practice, or both, but the effect feels undeniably holistic. You pause to adjust your gown, lifting the hem slightly to avoid contact with damp earth. Every movement is deliberate, hands gentle, shoulders poised, head slightly raised. Fringe stories suggest that queens might have trained attendants to observe posture subtly in the garden, offering quiet corrections to maintain perfect poise. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the importance of movement outside the chamber. Grace must extend into all spaces, even among blossoms and birds. Finally, you reach a sunlit bench, resting briefly while inhaling the faint aroma of herbs, flowers, and warm stone. You feel grounded yet elevated, aware that beauty is a living collaboration. Scent, texture, color, movement, and environment blending seamlessly. You probably won't survive this if you forget that even brief contact with nature influences composure, awareness, and aura. Sunlight warms your skin, petals brush gently against your hands, and the subtle motion of the garden air enhances the visual rhythm of gown and jewelry. As you rise and prepare to leave, you carry the lessons of the garden: attention to scent, texture, movement, and light. Beauty here is immersive, multisensory, and ongoing, a dynamic collaboration with surroundings as much as with powders, oils, and adornments. Each step back into the castle reinforces poise, presence, and the quiet, invisible signals that define the 14th century queen's performance of grace, authority, and allure. You return to the queen's chambers, where the afternoon light filters through stained glass windows, casting jewel-toned reflections across the polished floor. You probably won't survive this if you think the day's rituals are complete. Now comes the subtle art of finishing touches, final refinements in hair, makeup, and gesture that solidify presence for audiences and courtiers alike. Historians still argue whether these micro-adjustments were habitual or reserved for ceremonial appearances, but in this moment, every detail matters. You begin with hair, running fingers lightly through braids to ensure strands are smooth, subtle pins hidden, and curls precisely aligned. A delicate comb realigns minor wisps that escaped morning styling, while a chambermaid adjusts ribbons and small jeweled pins for symmetry. Fringe accounts suggest some queen's infused hair with faintly scented oils or crushed blossoms, creating a delicate perfume trail with movement. You probably won't survive this if you overlook the interplay between scent, sheen, and subtle motion. Even the smallest misalignment could disrupt the visual flow. Your gaze drifts to the face in the mirror, where soft powder and tinted cheeks catch the light just so. A tiny dab of rose water on fingertips smooths imperfections, reinforcing a gentle glow. Lips, previously tinted with crushed petals, receive a delicate brush of fragrance oil, enhancing subtle color and inviting a quiet, graceful smile. Historians still debate whether these rituals were health-conscious or performative, but the aesthetic impact is undeniable. Jewelry is reassessed. Necklaces shifted slightly to enhance the curve of the neck, earrings adjusted to catch light with every turn, and bracelets aligned so that subtle jingles occur naturally with gesture. Fringe stories suggest queens sometimes monitored how light reflected off metal or gems to ensure the shimmer conveyed authority rather than vanity. You probably won't survive this if you neglect these final checks. The overall composition of adornment communicates far more than any single item. Gloves are checked, ensuring fingers fit perfectly, seams remain smooth, and any embroidery aligns with sleeve folds. Shoes are lightly polished, laces tightened just so. The full ensemble gown, accessories, hair, and cosmetics must flow seamlessly with the rhythm of movement you practiced in the morning. Historians still argue whether such precise attention was expected daily or reserved for audiences, but you feel the quiet certainty that poise is inseparable from appearance. Finally, you rehearse subtle gestures, lifting a fan, adjusting a sleeve, offering a measured curtsy, or turning slightly to catch the light just right. Each micro-movement is choreographed, practiced, and intentional. Fringe accounts suggest that queens might have used mirrors strategically to anticipate audience perspective, ensuring elegance from every angle. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the importance of gesture. Posture and movement communicate as much as powder, perfume, and pearls combined. Standing back, you inhale deeply, sensing the culmination of the day's rituals. Scent, sheen, texture, movement, and subtle gestures harmonized into a living performance. Beauty here is total, an ongoing negotiation of appearance, posture, aura, and awareness. You carry it with you into audiences, ceremonies, and private interactions, every detail contributing to a seamless projection of refinement, power, and allure. The court awaits, but you now move fully prepared, each step, glance, and gesture resonating with confidence, elegance, and the careful artistry of a 14th-century queen. You walk slowly down the corridor toward the great hall, the echo of your steps muted by thick rugs and tapestries. You probably won't survive this if you think the final act of the day is mundane. Now, all previous rituals, powders, oils, scents, posture, gestures, and adornments come together in a living performance, visible to anyone who glimpses your passage. Historians still argue whether the grandeur of courtly appearance was genuinely admired or simply performed to meet expectation, but you feel the resonance of authority and beauty in every step. Light spills across your gown, accentuating folds, embroidery, and the faint shimmer of oils and powdered highlights. A soft breeze stirs your hair, teasing out subtle curls and the glint of jeweled pins. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens timed movements with natural lighting to maximize these effects, a living interplay of environment and presence. You probably won't survive this if you underestimate the impact of such details. The smallest interaction between light, movement, and adornment can project confidence or fragility. Passing courtiers bow or curtsy, their eyes drawn first to the gentle sway of fabric, then to the gleam of jewels, and finally to the serene composure of your face. You notice subtle nods exchanged, whispered comments, the quiet acknowledgement of mastery over appearance and demeanor. Historians still debate whether courtiers consciously read these cues or absorbed them unconsciously, but in practice, the effect is unmistakable. Presence conveys power and beauty amplifies it. Your hands move lightly, gestures measured yet fluid, reinforcing your narrative without words. Each motion, adjusting a sleeve, lifting a fan, shifting a jewel, is calibrated to appear natural while enhancing elegance. Fringe sources suggest that some queens choreographed gestures to the rhythm of courtly music, even if inaudible, ensuring motion remained harmonized with surroundings. You probably won't survive this if you disregard the subtle theater of movement. Poise in motion is as critical as the artistry of cosmetics, scent, and clothing. The hall opens before you, sunlight pooling across polished stone and reflecting off gilded decorations. You pause, letting posture, scent, jewelry, and gestures converge into a seamless expression of queenly presence. A slight smile lifts lips subtly tinted earlier, and the faint shimmer of oils and powders captures the light. Historians still argue whether such moments were spontaneous displays of charm or carefully rehearsed performances, yet you feel fully aware of the choreography behind each movement. You probably won't survive this if you forget that beauty is holistic. It is the confluence of ritual, environment, and perception. From the first powder to the final stride, each element contributes to a silent narrative of power, elegance, and awareness. Fringe accounts suggest that some queens consciously used audience perspective to emphasize particular features or gestures, subtly commanding admiration while maintaining approachability. As you step into the hall, every element of the day's preparation, cosmetics, oils, posture, adornments, gestures, and scent, culminates in a single fluid performance. You glide, inhaling the faint blend of rosewater, herbal notes, and the warmth of the castle stones. You feel fully present, embodying the artistry, discipline, and ritualized beauty of a 14th-century queen, poised, commanding, and quietly mesmerizing. Now you slow your pace, letting tension ease from shoulders and spine. The hall's grandeur fades into the gentle memory of soft sunlight, the subtle rustle of silk, and the faint, lingering scent of rosewater and herbs. Muscles relax as you inhale slowly, feeling warmth in your fingers and toes, and a quiet calm spreads through your chest. Your eyes, previously attentive to detail, close briefly, absorbing the sensation of layered textures, fragrances, and light. You imagine each element of the day's rituals dissolving into soft reverie. Powders, oils, tinted lips, braids, jewels, gloves, and measured gestures merging into a harmonious rhythm. The lessons of posture, movement, and presence blend with scent, touch, and ambient warmth, leaving a delicate halo of confidence and elegance that requires no audience to exist. Even the most bizarre fringe practices, the crocodile dung, powdered gold, scented pearls, fade into gentle amusement, curiosities now part of a textured memory rather than urgent necessity. Breathing deep, you feel the interconnection of mind, body, and environment. The garden's aroma, the apothecary's mystery, the reflective study, the soothing chamber, and the polished hallways of courtly performance all coalesce into a serene awareness. Every inhale carries the faint whisper of rituals past, and every exhale releases tension and expectation. The sensory symphony, scent, light, texture, motion, slows to a soft cadence, a gentle lull that encourages surrender to calm. You allow a soft smile to linger, appreciating the artistry and discipline that brought your body, mind, and presence into quiet alignment. The glow of day, the warmth of stone, and the delicate whispers of petals and fabric remain in your awareness, a subtle, comforting halo. Each heartbeat is steady, each breath soft, as the world outside becomes distant and you sink into the gentle embrace of reflection, poise, and quiet triumph. The rituals, details, and performances of the day have completed their cycle, leaving you grounded, centered, and calm. Now the gentle hum of existence carries you toward sleep, a soft, lingering echo of beauty, grace, and the quiet mastery of a 14th-century queen. Sweet dreams.